Hello, everyone, and it's great to see you all. I'm Indu Saxena, Senior Fellow and Chief Operation Officer at the Consortium of Indo-Pacific Researcher. Welcome to today's discussion, South Asia Quagmire, Striving for Peace. Basically, it's focused on the tumultuous relations between neighbors and current ruptures in South Asia internally. On the one hand, we see the emerging youth power and a desire to bring change and get rid of corrupt and inefficient governance. We have seen already from Sri Lanka to Bangladesh to Nepal, the grassroots level protest stormed the country's polity and changed the governments. However, it is still debated that this is only a power transfer from one party to another, or is the expected transformation is underway. What we can predict about Nepal's recent Zen Z protest, as the Nepal situation is still developing. And on the other hand, we see increasing hatred and growing animosity between neighbors. We'll talk about the geopolitics and how the major powers' involvement affecting the geopolitics of South Asia. In today's discussion, we touch upon three sections: national, inter-regional, and intra-regional, to navigate the complex web of South Asian quagmire. We have scholars and security experts from the region. Our panelists are highly regarded in their fields and frequently show up in media due to their exceptional expertise. To maximize our time together, I will offer a concise introduction so we can dive straight into the QA session after their initial remarks. I am honored to introduce Honorable Ambassador Anil Trigunath. He has joined us from New Delhi. He has served in the Indian mission in Asia, North Africa, Europe, and the United States. In the Ministry of External Affairs, he worked in the Economics West Asia Consular Division. He has published several articles and edited books on South Asia and West Asian security. Next, we have Major General Binod Vasnath, retired. He's retired from the Nepalese army and highly decorated with the Order of Superbal Jan Seva Sri Nepal, Order of the Lion Finland, and Order of the Cross Germany. He was also associated with the United States Army Command and General Staff College and Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies, USA. He represented the UN Department on various in Political Affairs Department and represented Nepali Army and the country in several international meets and humanitarian affairs. We have Dr. Sana Abdullah Close. He is a political scientist and affiliated with the Stanford University. Previously, she held the prestigious Stanton Nuclear Security Postdoctoral Fellowship. Her research interest includes governance, organizations, and institutions, military and nuclear policy. And currently, she has been involved in the multiple projects on South Asia security and nuclear security program. We have Dr. Jahid Khan. He is a examining scholar and visiting research fellow at Reading University, United Kingdom. He is also the registrar of American International University, Bangladesh, Dhaka. We have Dr. Pramod Jaiswal. He's a research director at NICE Institute, Nepal. He has been served fellow and visiting faculty in South Asia and Southeast Asian countries. He has authored and co-authored several books on Asian security and Indo-Pacific. We have Dinak Colombe. He is the consultant on geopolitics and public policy and served as the director of international affairs to former President Ranil Wickremesinghe. I welcome you all here and just announce that views expressed here are personal should not be constituted to any organization and institute. So I would like to invite the first, because it's the fresh. There are two main things that are coming up in my mind: and Nepal and new defense pact with Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. So let's go into the Nepal first. I would like to invite Major General Binod Basniat. Uh, 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 what do you see? What do you see at the Nepal instability at this moment, and how? Uh, what are the remedies for this Gen Z protest? Just I just in my initial remark I mentioned that it's just a power transfer from one party to another, or there is something significant uh, transformation that is going to happen. Major General, over to
If
you.
Yeah, if you put it in one sentence, all the political and security shifts or changes can be termed as a win, but not a victory. So this is, and the today's Gen Z's movement is the same. Whether they started from the Maoist movement till today, so everything is a win for. So which means that it's always a short-term gain, but not for a long-term stability. So when you go to the episode of the Gen Zs, I mean, you can figure out the youths coming up in South Asia into more limelight of looking for change. So Nepal too, actually, the younger population below 24 is almost 44 to 45%. So who see doors very closed, who see opportunities only leaving the country. And so when these things happen, like in Bangladesh, the quota systems, so this brings, but, I think the political parties were always, their doors were always knocked. They always, I mean, there were people writing on the issues, there were people, institutions, think tanks, and time and again, small protests. But so I feel that the incident came as a surprise, but not the episode. It didn't come as a surprise, but the ignorance of the political elites and the political parties was what ignited all this. So when it started, there were and I mean, it was a short 48 hours thing. I think there were three situations. One was the legality of the political parties were decreasing. The second, I think the law enforcement force or the tools of the government credibility was decreasing. And at the same time, the Gen Z's movement or the uprising were expanding in the sense in the streets as well as at homes, in the minds of the people, because of the. So this has two sides of the coin. One side is the uprising and the handling of the law enforcement forces, and the second side is the aftermath of they said the attack in the houses, attacks in the parliament buildings, or if you connect the dots, it's the judiciary, it's the political governance office, and it is business community. So I think this has different interests and different connotations and different messages. But with the formations of the interim government now, I think there are four challenges. One is constitutional amendments in the constitution that not just the protesters, but even the people are looking for. And one is the governance system, particularly focusing on anti-corruption drive. And third is the Commission for Human Rights Abuses, the misuse of authority, and the maximum use of excessive power against the peaceful protest. And the last is the election, the electoral rights that the people look for. I mean, every citizen wants to vote, whether they're in Nepal, they're abroad. As long as they hold a Nepali citizen, they would like to vote. So that challenge, these are the four challenges of four temporary. But again, I think it's an immediate political security comfort with imminent risks of crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We will take the next round of question. Now, I would like to invite the initial remarks from Ambassador Tribunat. Just for the 5 minutes, Ambassador, what you want to say, not only the Nepal, just in the South Asia quagmire in general.
Thank you, Dr. Indu, once again for inviting me to be part of this illustrious panel, who are many of them are good friends and like our South Asian friends. You say it's a group. Uh, Let me say one thing. The neighbors are real. They are gift of geography. So you have to learn to live with them. You have to find ways to them. If they are going through any pains, you got to stand up to it, help them. At the same time, each country has a very specific nature, and General Basantnath has already mentioned about it. What happened? And there are very similarity. The similarity is that today the youth is very impatient. When it sees any kind of a governance or a governance architecture which is arrogant in its power, which is basically not caring about that, they are only worried about their own autocratic ways of controlling uh, power and the pelf and the resources of the country and not deploying it for the larger good of the masses, then it is natural that they rise. Secondly, there is a message for the world. Today, like the cocaine, social media is an addiction. And if you just stop access to social media, your complicity becomes very, very open. And therefore, your authority is challenged through the social media networks. We have seen Arab Spring, those of you remember a few years ago, exactly done by in Egypt, for example, through the social media alone. In many countries, this how happened. This is what is happening today. And in the immediately, unfortunately, because most of our countries are ruled by previous generations, they really have no connect with their masses, or especially the people who are youth. We all talk about youth dividend, but very often we fail to connect with our policies, with their requirements, with their aspirations. And that's why we are seeing this kind of a problem. From India's perspective, of course, uh, these are concerning developments because insecurity and instability in any of our neighbors has a direct connotation and implication for India. And therefore, the effort of India through its neighborhood first policy and otherwise has always been to assist to the extent possible its neighbors in coming up and doing well as far as their economic growth is concerned. And sometimes, of course, because of the gigantic size in the region that India has, this big brother syndrome prevails. And today, with the another option in China being available to them and Chinese policy being what it is, obviously they seem to get options. But India's expectation from its neighbors in its non-reciprocal relationship is only that their territory will not be used to harm security interests of India. That's the only expectation, nothing else. In return, a lot more is being offered, given, and India wants them to get along. Because very simply put, if your neighbors are not doing well, you can't do well. Whether it is security, whether it is economy, whether it is political developments, we can't have a collaborative partnership. And therefore, it is extremely important, especially for the powers that are bigger, due to economic size, due to military size, due to their demographics, a greater responsibility behoves upon them. And therefore, India adopted this policy, which has been started with Gujarat Doctrine, and then now we call it as Neighborhood First Policy. Um, Retaliation has not been part of this policy in a way, even though there are certain instances that have happened in the past because of some policy, I would say, aberrations. But at the same time, I believe that as in Nepal's case, as in Bangladesh, I mean, Bangladesh often one compares, okay, Mr. Mohammed Yunus, India may not be very happy, but you'll be surprised that during his time, the trade between India and Bangladesh, despite all the constraints, has gone up by 12% during Mr. Yunus's from August to May. Uh, so, and today, only just 5 minutes back, I was reading a tweet that the Indian oil had decided to enhance its exports of petroleum products to Bangladesh. So at no point, and when I was in Bangladesh recently, I mean, I've been talking to all our friends that we are not, this is not that against the people. One thing that our neighbors need to understand that every country works with a government of the day, whichever is the government of the day. Whatever developmental assistance is being provided will have to be given through that. At the same time, that developmental assistance and the projects benefit the ordinary people more. If you develop a road or a bridge or a factory or capacity building, that ordinary citizens benefit from that, not the particular leader directly in that sense. So that, I think that kind of a public diplomacy, in my view, the Indians somehow have failed to convey to the common people that whatever India was doing was for them and was being identified with a particular leader or otherwise. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Ambassador, I will take the question. You said the very interesting words that neighbors are real and gift, and also the China, about the China is now an option. But what we think that China was always an option there. So we will talk more on this after. Let me allow everyone to speak for 5 minutes. So Dr. Jahid, take on this one in general in South Asia, Quagmire.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Dr. Indu, and you're quite right. Maybe Consortium of Indo-Pacific Research is one forum where all the South Asian researchers gather together very freely, and we have been doing this for quite a long time. So let me just pick up where General Basnat was left in one of his words, that it is a win but not a victory. Perhaps it sort of reminds me, if Anthony Gramsci was here today in this webinar and he was joining, how would he describe this particular thing? He probably would pick up his prison notebook in which he wrote something like this: the crisis consists precisely in the fact that the old is dying but not dead yet, and the new cannot be born. And in this interim, a great variety of morbid symptom appears. So what we are seeing is a revolution or uprising, whatever you say, is genuine, organic, and that has led to certain changes. But what that change is still to be manifested through a particular system of governance, democracy, voting, change in societal norms, or eradication of the corruptions. So that part is yet to come. So we are actually in the interim, in that gap between win and victory, and we are a lot, and it is still shaping up. So this tells us a lot of things, and this is also an opportunity for us, actually, in that sense, for South Asia to come together and to sort of build a new South Asia, particularly driven by the Gen Zs, who are the future of this particular of this region. So as a researcher, and particularly for my peace studies researcher, I thought I sort of put the spotlight from a different angle, from a systemic angle, which you alluded to during your remarks initially. If you see the Global Peace Index of 2025, they publish it. It's probably the 18th year of their publication. In that, they characterize the South Asian region as the second least peaceful region in the world. It was the third peaceful region in previous year in 2024, only ahead of MENA, which is Middle East and North Africa, and the Sub-Saharan Africa. But this time we have sort of graduated to be the second least peaceful region. Because why? Because the 4 out of the 7 countries, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, to some extent Bhutan, and also Pakistan, have recorded the largest average fall in their peacefulness index, which is measured on 3 broad categories. I can come to that during the Q&A if someone is interested. And in particular case for Bangladesh, the GPI, the Global Peace Index, attributes deterioration for the Bangladesh case because of a repressive measure
under the previous government, which caused a lot of death. So that sort of comes into that matrix of counting the peacefulness of a particular region or a country. So your topic today is very timely, and it's also needed from the small South Asian countries' perspective, because the perspective of small South Asian countries is a little bit different than the other bigger neighbors. And yes, so everybody is neighbor, and we need to have that sort of neighborly, cordial sort of jurisdiction.
Dr. Jaid, your voice is breaking.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? Is it okay?
Yeah. Your voice is breaking. Yeah, we can hear you, but no,
Internet
yeah.
a little bit unstable here, but so from that sort of perspective, there are three things I think. What as a researcher, three things comes out. What is the reason behind this sliding into the busyness or sliding into the quagmire? The first is obviously the capacity of the region to address complex issues. We have not been able to develop a regional forum or standard regional forum in which the key issues would get addressed or some solution will come out. Most of our aspiration is to sort of become a multilateral, we're very active in multilateral forum like the CO, Quad, GA.
Dr. Jaid, is not clear. Could you please just adjust to your internet till then we can get the another speaker so that we can
Or
just
maybe the video he can stop, so
Yeah.
that would be better.
yeah, you can just go with the audio one.
Okay.
Mhm.
Can you hear me now? Is it
Yeah.
better? Is it better now?
Yes.
Okay, so the first point that I was trying to make is this: we probably in South Asia, we probably lack a regional mechanism and process of addressing complex issues. We are very active in multilateral forum like the SCO, Quad, or GA, BRICS, so on. But in terms of the regional mechanism like the SARC or to some extent, I mean, for example, our issue with Rohingya refugees is still lingering for about 8 years, and the region has not been able to sort of address it. So, but then that sort of lacking did not remain in vacuum, because ASEAN has picked up the issue, and the UNSC resolution was actually propelled by the ASEAN's initiative. What was the outcome? The outcome was the resolution does not sort of address Bangladesh's need. So there is a need for the region to come together in addressing this particular issue. The second sort of consequence of this particular lack of capacity is probably pushing some of the South Asian countries to look for allies and partners in much more in multilateral forums and in extra-regional powers as well. China's inroad or Americans' inroad or any other powers' inroad towards this towards South Asia is because we, as a region, we have lacked on finding our own solutions. So going global has become the preferred option for the smaller South Asian countries, and to come out of this regional quagmire. It has different dimensions. For landlocked countries, there are certain difficulties, and also for countries which are open to the sea, they have other avenues to approach. This is not to say that there was no this was not there before, but the previous preferences was where of cooperation was mostly on developmental and economic issues. Now it is more moving into security issues as well. Take, for example, the UN high-level conference on the Rohingya issues, which is coming in probably next week in the UNGS summit, which was propelled by Professor Mohammed Yunus of Bangladesh. Because we were not able to get it solved in our regional forum, it had to be pushed back again to the UN and trying to bring out some kind of dynamism in solving that problem. And third, there is also a misalignment of the smaller South Asian nations and with the key regional and extra-regional actors about some of the fundamental norms the trend in some of the fundamental norms like the sovereignty norm and non-interference norm, that makes these small states more apprehensive of what if this happens to me, what has happened to Qatar or what has happened to some other countries which has because that is as I was saying, Gramsci's quote, the interregnum is not only at the domestic or the regional level, it is also in the systemic level where a new polarity is coming out. A new multi-layered multipolarism is probably coming out, and in that interregnum there is likely to be this kind of apprehensions, reshaping of the alignments, and some people calls it a tectonic shift on the geopolitics. But till that gets settled, and in that interregnum, when these long-held principles of non-interference, sovereignty norm gets violated by some players, powerful players, that also creates an apprehension for the smaller states. So that this may not be as true in case of South Asia as it is in other parts, because the competition is not that intense, but it has a side effect. It's a second order effect, which is it sort of encourages militarization. So we have a trend of militarization in South Asia. Now, what does that do? That sort of takes the resources out from the developmental issues or development expenditure to the militarization issues. So that is another area which I think for which we need to come together, like the way we're doing it here. It should sort of transcend to the political leaders as well, to sort of focusing on the people and not to get into that trap of militarization, instead of remaining focused on alleviating the poor people's conditions and scaling up the Gen Zs to become a global citizen. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jahid. Now I would like to invite Dr. Sania for her remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Indu, and everyone for their very, very interesting and very provocative and insightful point of view on South Asia Quagmire. I will just primarily focus on Pakistan and also take how this region is impacting us. Inside Pakistan, I think starting from Nepal, what happened is both a warning and inspiration for Pakistani audience, a warning sign for Pakistani decision makers, how they will unfold if anything like this unfolds in Pakistan, and inspiration for Pakistani youth, which is a huge number of young population and Generation Zs who are very much active on social media. I think this is alarming. And why it is alarming? Because Pakistan has been going through three major challenges in the past few, I would say, years. The first one, I would basically say there are three C's. One is the civil-military imbalance, which has been for a long time going in the favor of military dominance. The second is a heavy crackdown on civilians and suppression of civilians, including civilian institutions, including judiciary inside Pakistan. And the third one is climate change. The last one is something which is binding, I would say, not only three major countries of South Asia, most of the major countries of South Asia together, which could be a binding force for the future peace, if there could be any. Now, the political turmoil in Pakistan has been brewing for a long time. The heavy crackdown on Pakistan's major political party, PTI, and Imran Khan has been brewing a lot of civil unrest, a lot of grievances inside Pakistan. Pakistani expats are actually not happy with what is happening inside Pakistan. So I would say Nepal is kind of a clear warning sign. If things don't go in the right direction, which I fear, then there could be a possibility that something can start in Pakistan. Now, there have been several instances in the past few months that a lot of huge, massive protests were led. But since Imran Khan, who was the head of the major political party, was in detention, there was no guidance and those protests could not go anywhere. The strong military hold in the country did not let anything like Nepal could happen. So that is a positive sign that a strong military institution cannot let anything like that happen in the country. However, this is not a very promising sign. Something that has not happened cannot happen in future. So this is where Pakistan is actually different, but also similar from the rest of the South Asian countries. The other important thing is how Pakistan has been dealing with its immediate neighbors, which is Afghanistan and India. And the last this summer, we have seen how the crisis unfolded with India, which was not a great episode for the region. And we also saw how Pakistan actually tried to end the crisis, which was also not a good idea. How to escalate the crisis and how to bring it to a diffusion with a third party, which was United States and other Gulf countries. Will it happen again? Unfortunately, seems like with a greater intensity, with much more turmoil that is happening in the region, with much more complacency and how we are dealing with the militancy. I would say this is another episode which does not tell us that it may not happen again. How Pakistan has dealt with Afghanistan border issues and how Pakistan is not accepting the Taliban government is not, again, a promising issue. How Pakistan has dealt with Afghan refugees, in the wake of which we have started a military operation in Bajor to just tighten the screw on the militants against TTP, it is going to have another backlash. So what is happening inside Pakistan is that a massive displacement is happening from people who are affected by Bajor agency operation, and then there are also people in the Punjab who are heavily affected by the climate change and floods. So people are in grievances, people are going through the massive test of the times inside Pakistan, where their political rights have been violated, the economic situation is bad, the country is not able to provide resources, there's a corruption, and the political legitimacy of the government in power is also very challenged. And what is keeping all these indicators together is a strong military hold. So how long this suppression can continue and dissent the voices of the civilians is again a question of the time, which has been coming back to Pakistani audience over and over. And now Pakistan has learned anything from the past? Unfortunately not. I don't think so. What is happening against PTI is another episode how Bangladesh was created. And is Pakistan making any efforts to do something different this time? Unfortunately not. But what is different this time is that social media has unleashed the power of autonomy and freedom among people. Back then, it was very easy to change the narrative, control the narrative, and guide people in a direction that this has happened, control media, and tell people like, oh, this was Mujibur Rahman and he did that and the elections were this, and now this is the dictator who is going to tell you what is the right way to go. And this has not been working out because today's Pakistan is different with the social media awareness and a lot of youth over there who are educated. And then expat is so powerful in different countries who are giving the feedback constantly from different sources that no, this is not going to happen. Imran is not the Mujibur Rahman. And what happened in 70, 71 is not going to happen again because this is people's power and you can't snatch people's vote and give them an illegitimate political leadership and tell them to follow the rule. And this is going to, I think, this is going to be a big resistance inside Pakistan. But this is also something which is keeping it locked in that asymmetrical power equation with its powerful neighbors. Quickly run through the great powers equation with Pakistan. I think United States relationships are very clear. Washington has been very wary of democratic backsliding inside Pakistan, but also wants to keep a little bit of a military institutional contact with each other. The Gulf states' role of Saudi Arabia, which will come, I'm sure, later on. I think I was expecting this coming much earlier, some kind of a defense agreement, but what happened in Qatar just exacerbated the incident. The relationship with China, I think military-led Pakistan favors China because that is something very helpfully promotes China's interest in the region. So China is very happy if there is a solid military-dominated structure in power, or there is a coalition government in power, or a democratic government in power, which they have to deal with on several fronts. Instead, this supports some kind of an authoritarian structure, which they have to deal at once, and then the things go in line, particularly how they want to envision their CPAC stuff. I'll just end here, and I'll wait for the question and answer session to continue the rest of the conversation.
That's a great summarization, Sanya. I would say of all the points. Yeah, but I observed that whatever happened in Sri Lanka while during the protest in Bangladesh and in Nepal, the military was unwilling. Military was unwilling and is unwilling to take the control. But I think that that will not be the case in Pakistan. And I will talk more on this when we go for the next round. I know my two of the colleagues, they have been waiting. I would like to invite Dr. Jaiswal for his initial remarks, and then on, then we'll go for the direct questions to the panelists.
Thank you, Dr. Sasanath, for the invitation. I'll be echoing what a previous speaker has said, but let me try to repeat whatever they have said. Like, I think I'll try to talk more on a little bit on Nepal and then on the geopolitical factor. Coming back to Nepal, like there are three factors. If you look at internal factor, there was intense pressure from the youth that Nepalese political party has to reform because there was intense corruption. The senior leader were there in power playing musical chairs since several decades, and they have not failed to meet the aspirations. That is one. Second, if you look at globally, the aspiration of youth is rising. It's not only Nepal or Colombo or even around the world, because this globalization has united the youth. You know, the youth now do not know national boundaries. They can unite, they can connect. At the same time, their dreams, desire, and aspirations are also rising together. For example, if new iPhone is launched in US, or if new car is launched in any part of the world, youth around the world have that desire. In the past, it used to take years for those desires to come to India, years for those desires to come to other parts of the world. It is only in that particular region. But now you can see that youth, they have no boundaries. They think that they can have wonderful thing, that you don't need to go to any other country to get opportunities. So that new era thinks that they, in spite of being in their own country, they can bring changes. They can have all that they can see around the world. So that's why we have seen that there is intense pressure on government around the world to deliver. Second, the youth also want to send a signal through this movement that the government has to fear if you don't deliver. You have to be accountable. So these are the first internal aspect that we have seen in Colombo, Dhaka, or in Kathmandu and other parts of the country in the region. Coming back to regional, we have seen what happened in Colombo, Dhaka, Kathmandu, and people are learning from each other. Second, there are other regional power who are very much interested in this region. Obviously, it's the rise of Asia, and you can say that the relevance of South Asia is very important. We have three nuclear power in the region standing to each other, and that brings lots of global attention. A role of China is very important. China is very much engaged in the region, and that has also added to the complexities. Let me briefly touch on the rise of China and the geopolitical shift. We all know that China, the current President Xi Jinping is the first Chinese president who have a clear South Asia policy. Like nowhere in the past, China had such a very distinct and clear and very ambitious policy towards South Asia. Xi Jinping is the only Chinese president in the Chinese history who has visited all the South Asian countries except Bhutan. With Bhutan, they don't even have diplomatic ties. That's why they have not moved to that. But we are aware that how China is trying to have deeper engagement in Bhutan, have resolve the border issues and start diplomatic ties. So this rise of China is also other factor which has added to the complexities. Second is that the geopolitical factor, where we can see the shift of all the players. Look at how US and Russia are engaging, Russia and India and China. There's lots of shift and ups and downs in the geopolitical framework, and that has also bring lots of uncertainties and confusion within the countries as well. They're engaging at the same time, they're not fully engaging at the moment. So it's a very complex situation where the countries are not able to. One of the reasons for instability is also the external factor. That's what I want to say. Another other factor is, I think, intense economic pressure around the world is other factor, because economic recession after COVID around the world has added to frustration. That's why there are lots of remarks. There are lots of activities against migrants, against diversity, tax and non-tax issues. That has also added to the complexities around the world. That's why you can see that massive frustration has gone from the youth to other generation, and that's why even the great power are not having a stability in their own country. We don't look at US having a stability internally. There are lots of chaos. Look at what is happening in France or in Asia. So I think one of the major reasons behind all is economic recession that is adding to the frustration of all class of people. And in this whole segment, when there is lots of internal, regional, and extra-regional complexities and challenges, one of the major challenges that we have in South Asia, we don't have a regionalism working here. At least we could have those regional institutions that could help us to collaborate and minimize our tension. But rather than, since we don't have and we are not able to resolve our own problem, the external problem add to our problem. So I think this is the major scenario at the moment, what we see at the moment. Thank you.
Yes, well, I would like to invite now Dinok for his remarks, and then we will go for the QA more.
Thank you, Indu. So I think from Sri Lanka's perspective, there are two lessons that South Asia and probably globally that can be taken from the protests in 2022. In 2022, when the economic collapse happened, when the country declared bankruptcy, many of the youth took to the streets and there were popular protests that actually were incited by power cuts that went on for up to 18 hours a day. Food shortages were prevalent around the country, rising cost of living, fuel shortages, gas shortages, and what have you. Now, one of the things that we realized when that protest happened and what the youth were coming out for was on economic mismanagement by the then government. At the time, the former president Gotabaya Rajapaksa and his government decided to go for a highly populist agenda, which saw income tax virtually abolished in the country. They decided to stop importing fertilizer, which resulted in farmers not being able to grow necessary the food crops. And then also there was a complete depletion of our foreign reserves, where the country dropped down to, at the time of us taking government, we only had $50 million in our foreign reserves. So these were a host of issues that were prevalent. They were in the forefront of the public eye, and it resulted in the youth coming out onto the streets. Now, at the time of protesting, as I said, it was based on economic mismanagement, economic hardship. However, after that, what we saw was progression from demands for economic reform, from demands that the country go to the IMF, to a change in the youth's voice and their calls. And this agenda was actually pushed forward by many of the opposition members, who decided to place the blame for the economic mismanagement at the feet of the politicians across the board. And they decided to go against the grain and not call it economic mismanagement, but they decided to call it corruption. Now, when we took over in 2022, as I said, we had a host of issues that required the country to undertake a fairly intense economic reform program, which saw quite a few austerity measures come in. And now what we're seeing is there's been a sidelining of that economic reform program when the new government, the leftist government, came in under President Anwar Kumar Dissanayake last year. That reform program has actually been put to a side, and to the forefront has come anti-corruption drive. Now, that's not to say there is no corruption in the country, or not to say that that is not an issue that needs to be addressed. It absolutely must be addressed. But I think we have to recognize that, unfortunately, and I think Ambassador Trigunath also mentioned this, that the impatience of the youth, and that is something that I think all countries in South Asia are recognizing, that when President Gotabaya Rajapaksa fled the country and resigned from overseas, the protests started to dissipate, and they no longer, the calls and the intensity of the protests reduced. Then once the protesters tried to actually take over the parliament, that's when the fear kicked in and the public decided, no, you know what, we don't want any more of this, and they pulled away. So the protesters, who were predominantly youth-led, they lost interest in the situation. And then from 2022, from the mid-2022, when President Wickremesinghe took over, there was a large scale of effort to engage the youth in the reform program. And actually, for the first time ever in the country, there was in the parliamentary oversight committees, accommodation was made for youth representatives to be part of these oversight committees. Unfortunately, we found that youth engagement was fairly low. We fast forward 2.5 years, and we come to the 2024 presidential election. Youth engagement is suddenly back up because there's a new rallying cry, which is not economic management or economic reform, but instead anti-corruption. Now, fast forward another 1 year, we've seen that once again the youth are disinterested. They have pulled away because there is no progress on the anti-corruption drive. So I think that is something that we have to bear in mind, that the youth are disengaged from public policy, from public politics, and they're also impatient when they are engaged. They expect fast results, and I think that is very much a result of the change in society that we are seeing due to social media. So I think that's definitely one of the lessons that South Asian nations need to learn. The other thing, which I think Sri Lanka really was able to benefit from, was the fact that public protest went hand in hand with the democratic norms. And by that, I mean, in July 2022, the protesters took to the streets. There's an estimated 100,000 in the city on July 9th. And they took over the president's house. They took over they had taken over the president's office already. They took over the prime minister's residence and office, and they forced President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to flee the country and resign. And so suddenly we had a situation which had never happened before in Sri Lanka, where a democratically elected leader was forced to flee the country due to public protest and resign. But then what happened is the democratic process kicked in, and we saw the parliament, which a group of protesters attempted to take over, repelled, and then parliament took over, and they elected the next president, who was Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe. So what happened is the protests had achieved what they wanted to, which was for Gotabaya Rajapaksa to resign. But then the system kicked back into place. And because the system kicked back into place, the country was immediately able to get back to work and ensure that the economic crisis that we were under was handled, and we stabilized the situation, and we were able to go forward. For example, in 2022, this country's GDP to debt ratio, debt to GDP ratio, stood at 116%. By September last year, when we handed over the government, we were able to bring it down to 96%. So it's a near 20% reduction. Also, we were able to achieve the complete restructuring of our debt. We were able to start to rebuild our reserves, where, as I said, our foreign reserves were at $50 million, and we brought it up to now over 6 billion. So I think these are the two clear examples that Sri Lanka's public protest, the popular protests, we can take from, and I think the rest of the South Asian region needs to move forward with.
Thanks, Dinab. After the initial remarks, I would like to invite Major General Basnayat for the two small queries. One, that is instability in Nepal. How it is going to benefit China and hurting India, or vice versa, whatever, I don't know. Want to hear from you. And the second one, because we have the very limited time, and want to know, after the Operation Sindoor, we know the geopolitics of South Asia has been changed a lot. And how do you see that Saudi Arabia and Pakistan's defense pact, what will be the implication on South Asia? I just want everyone to for their remarks, starting with the Major General.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, there were, like during the protests, there were, yes, there are talks about the geopolitical factor or the geopolitical squeeze that was supporting the, but actually when you term the Gen Z's uprising in Kathmandu, I termed it as a natural, unscripted uprising with a Nepali pulse. So which means that it was more a domestically organized thing with the modern technology, with not an organized group that launched. But which doesn't mean that now with the interim government and how Nepal is going to shape is going to be in the interest, particularly for both Beijing and Delhi. So in this context, and the United States, which has so much reach and has lots of interest in South Asia also. So as others have been putting up in, China's interest in South Asia has grown, and it will keep on growing. And instability in the South Asian region is more or loss to New Delhi, to India, than for Beijing, because of geography, as well as because of the particularly for Nepal, like it's a landlocked country, and its approach to its resources is very much dependent. So I think the situation and how it unfolds is more important to New Delhi and Nepal's relationship rather than in comparison with Beijing and Kathmandu. So to put it in a short frame, I think Nepal's leaders must identify what is happening today and what is in the interest of Nepal, and the hindrance that the constitution has formed, and correct it in a way that the leaders would be able to answer Nepal's interest as well as balance both Delhi and Beijing, both the immediate neighbors.
Would you like to say anything on the defense pact between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia?
Okay, this has given a different look, but we must look into this, not just Saudi Arabia and Pakistan nexus. I mean, they had military connections quite from some time. But the treaty, of course, has implications. At the same time, I think this is more related to South Asia in some extent, and more to the Middle East, more focused to Iran and China. And I think it's a leverage for Pakistan when they are dealing with India. So it's a leverage, but I think it is more focused for the purpose of the Middle East or the Persian Gulf.
Thanks, Ambassador Tribhunath. I just want you to again on the defense pact, and first of all, I want you to just say a few words about the neighborhood policy. Is it failing in Bangladesh and in Pakistan, in Nepal, and or do you think that the Big Brother responsibility should be wider? Looking at the geopolitical context and the major powers' interest in South Asia?
Well, I think that firstly, I must say that these changes that have taken place in our neighborhood, whether they were engineered from outside or sui generis from within because of the youth frustration or otherwise, there are arguments for both. But at the same time, I just wish that these countries stabilize fast, get back on their democratic ways and towards development. That's our wish. And India has consistently provided assistance to whosoever is in power. That has not been the case at all that you refrain, including with in Bangladesh with Mr. Yunus. Whenever there has been a request for whatever supplies, our technical teams have been going and talking, whether the electricity connection through even Nepal to Bangladesh via India. That exchange was actually done during Mr. Yunus's time. And as I already mentioned about the trade that's growing. So at no point has India refrained. Only thing is that some of the new or ongoing high impact, heavy duty infrastructure projects that were supposed to be undertaken have been put on hold until such time that we have the elections in Bangladesh. I mean, neighborhood first policy is a policy whereby you treat your neighbors, A, with respect, and B, with as per their requirements, what they want for their own development. Now, so how can it fail? I mean, I simply wonder. Every country and its people have a right to decide for the kind of government they want to have. They have their own challenges, corruption, their autocratic ways of the governance by the parties. They try to play their own games. So you can't help it. India, being a part of South Asia, being a biggest neighbor of these countries, being civilizationally connected, obviously have greater responsibility to deal with that, and it's trying to discharge it. And I'm not saying because of that. Look at Maldives. I mean, Maldives was totally, the leadership came out on the basis of India Out campaign. Not only that, I mean, there was an acidic thing. And once they came to power, they realized that which is the country that's going to help them. Likewise in Sri Lanka. I mean, this had suffered from China's debt. And as Mr. Dinok said, that what Gotapaksha had done was taking so many white elephant projects and this, that. So there are things. Likewise in Nepal. I mean, with Nepal, we have our own relationship, which is at the people-to-people level. There are definitely, like any family, you will have differences. That's not there. Bangladesh, I think that this was treated as a major success story as far as India was concerned in terms of relationship. So I feel that that Bangladesh eventually has to realize, because there are three sides, India is there. And it is a very important country from India's regional initiatives, whether it is the BIMSTEC, whether it is BBIN, or even SAARC, to the extent that it can take off. Our problem in the region has only been with Pakistan. And Pakistan is also the only problem with Pakistan. And whatever we feel for our neighbors, we exactly the same policies we wanted to follow with Pakistan. But Pakistan has simply one policy, and that is India-centric. And it is not even all Pakistanis, but it is the deep state, which is in Rawalpindi, that is fully committed to continue to have 1,000 cuts against India and wants the zero-sum policy in every which way it wants to play. And so India has stopped conversations except on very important issues like exchange of nuclear installations, exchange of prisoners, some of the religious corridors. But otherwise, bilateral exchanges have been completely stopped. There has been an agreement in 2003, which was for ceasefire, which has lasted on the border for some time. But then, because they could not afford the fact that Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir was becoming far more normal. And therefore, we saw the Pahalgam attacks. And India has made a policy that whenever India is attacked, it will attack the terror hideouts, wherever they are. It has been happening on the Myanmar border. It has been happening with Bangladesh border. It has happened with Pakistan. So if the Pakistani government decided to support those, and there is adequate evidence on that, so Operation Sindoor continues. So this is not going to be a change as far as India's policy in fighting terror is concerned, irrespective of what is the US position, what is China's position, or what is anybody else's position. This is our own national security and our own interest, and we have to guard our country. That is going to remain. Now, the impact of the Saudi deal. Now, those who know the region know very well that Pakistan has been very well entrenched militarily, and Pentagon and the Pakistani military have an umbilical connection, frankly. And that is the reason that you have seen the CENTCOM commander meeting General Asim Munir, inviting him when the change took place. President Trump also met General Asim Munir on that. So Pakistan has always been supported by the United States, especially the military. What they have done is essentially, to a great extent, they have undermined the civilian government in Pakistan, whatever it's. I mean, I know that Sanya mentioned about the civil-military imbalances that happened there, because in many countries have an army. In Pakistan, is the army that has a country. So obviously, this is something that is a challenge for us. So this, I don't see that it is going to have a great impact on us, given the fact that our relationship with Saudi Arabia today is no longer the same as it used to be 10 years ago. Today, it's a global, comprehensive sort of a strategic partnership with Saudi Arabia. They understand. And I was myself involved in the Prime Minister's visit in 2010 to Saudi Arabia, when for the first time in our Riyadh declaration, we had included the fight against terror, cross-border terrorism, and all those things that never, ever happened before. And that gave jitters to Pakistan. So to that extent, India was able to dissociate the Pakistan factor from its relationship with the Gulf countries. But by this agreement, and if by implication you say, if let's say India again takes on and Pakistan, whether Saudi Arabia, will come in defense of Pakistan, I think that remains to be seen.
Thank you, Mr. Sir. And now I want to take a few words from the Sanya. What is the defense pact initially, like just came in the newspapers like yesterday bit. Just tell us a little bit about the defense pact and why Pakistan want to provide the security umbrella to the Saudi or the Middle East? Why not China? Because is this only the Islam or the Muslim Brotherhood that comes, or there is some another play?
Thank you, Indu. Yes. So first of all, this is not something very new, because in 2015, Saudi government actually initiated, which was called Islamic Military Counterterrorism Coalition. It was also commonly dubbed as Muslim NATO. Although it did not have a formal integrated structure and command structure, it was not a cooperative defense kind of an organization as NATO is. But the idea was that Riyadh is going to take a leadership role to create a security defense kind of a organization to prevent counterterrorism extremism in Muslim countries. So it initially started with 34 countries and then it expanded to 40 plus. I would say it's less of a Muslim NATO kind of a thing. It's more like a Sunni NATO kind of a thing, because we do see that there are Shia-dominated countries which are out of that coalition, that is Iran, Iraq, and Syria. So, and in 2017, we saw that Pakistan's former army chief, General Rahil Sharif, was actually appointed as the commander of that Islamic coalition. So it dates back to 2015, and this new defense pact is going to be one of the another chains which is linked to that partnership. Pakistan's military have had very close ties with the defense with respect to defense with Gulf countries and Saudi Arabia, and also that Pakistan's nuclear program has been very much closely supported by those countries. So it's something that I would say out of blue at all. It is something that Muslim countries have had some kind of background knowledge about how they're going to pursue, if any cooperative or extra regional threat comes in their way, how they're going to cooperate with one another. I don't think so that Riyadh needs aircrafts and stuff like that from Pakistan, because they have a lot of partnerships with Western countries, and they have very good partnership with the United States, so they can definitely have a better defense equipment from other regional partners or extra-regional partners. This is more, I would say, yes, it can be more that Pakistan can provide an extended deterrence kind of a thing to Saudi Arabia. And if you see it from Pakistan's perspective, I think it is a kind of a win-win situation. Given the fact that the country is not doing economically well, what do they have? Right now, only the defense and a strong military. So how would they react to the world? How do they justify their significance to have such a lavish infrastructure of a military, which is where the country is teetering to the brink of bankruptcy? Unless and until they justify their role outside the country and in the region. And I think that's where Pakistan military has a significance to just put their front foot out and say, oh, we are the guardians, not only for Pakistan's security and sovereignty, we can also provide extended deterrence to the countries that are in need of our nuclear umbrella. And if they cannot have their own nuclear weapons, we are there to protect them or provide some kind of a shield. Now the question remains how the West would react to it, how Israel is going to react to it. I think that these are the key questions for even Pakistani policymakers. Can they afford some kind of a resentment from United States or Israel? I think I think that was the reason Riyadh was very careful until this Qatari attack happened, where they think that maybe securing lines directly with Israel cannot help, and we should have something like a backup to protect our sovereignty.
Point Riyadh was initially US is providing the security umbrella to Riyadh. Now Riyadh is not trusting United States, looking at the attack on the Qatar. So yeah, interesting play out there. And you mentioned that Pakistan military has a stronghold, and at least they can do whatever they can muddle or meddle the security concerns over here. But definitely it's going to again with the China and India, because China is much happier than the US and India, what Pakistan is doing. And well, you mentioned that Iran is not Iran is out of that Muslim kind of NATO, because yeah, I know that I just read that it's a kind of NATO that if there will be attack on one country, it will be considered to the to other two in Saudi Arabia and the Pakistan.
True, yeah. So up to now, they have not done, like, they don't have a unified command structure as NATO has, and it doesn't have it's so far a defense pact, and it's not a defense pact as yet. It's more like a coalition among Muslim countries. And it is not clear what are the modalities. They have not done any joint military exercises. They have said they are going to have data sharing, information sharing, intelligence sharing, media. So far, it more seems like a political, military driven or maybe ideologically driven coalition at this point. But yes, it has a tendency to grow into something bigger, given the fact that the Gulf countries and Riyadh and Pakistan have that kind of a history of strong cooperation within the defense architecture. So it can actually develop into that, but it depends how they are going to meld into the political atmosphere, the geopolitical atmosphere, particularly how United States is going to react to both of these countries, which is Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. And we know that Israel is going to react on that. So we have to see like how they politically and what would be the optics of how if it stretches out to that level.
Okay, thanks.
Can I just add a word?
Yeah, sure, please.
You know, I mean, I feel that this has been done with the connivance of the United States. The Saudis are very important for the United States as well in the region. They're being the biggest economy, the biggest market for the US equipment. Where does the Americans, I mean, the Pakistanis score in this whole thing? They have 81% of their equipment, which is of Chinese origin. But at the same time, they also have F-16s. They have been training on Rafales and flying for the Qataris and the other countries in the region. So this blends very well into systems, the equipment that they have. But the problem is that all these countries are now placing big orders on the Chinese equipment, because the Americans, whatever they have, whether it's the bases or the equipment they have sold, there is a precondition that it will be, before it's used, it has to be approved. And they will never approve against use against the Israelis. So as far as Saudi Arabia and the other Gulf countries are concerned, they don't want the Israelis to be once again adventurous. That's it. Although President Trump, as you know, that he said that after talking to Netanyahu, he tried to assure the Qatari Emir that there will be no attacks. But then Netanyahu went, no, there will be another attacks. And any country which is harboring terrorists will go and attack them all over. So this is a very peculiar situation. I think that this was expected, and as Hannah said, and so I think that we'll have to see how it goes by. And Iran is not excluded of this security architecture, by the way, given the kind of rapprochement that's happening between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And this having a standby force is an idea of the Egyptians for quite some time.
Thanks. Also, the Pakistan also supported the Iran, like in the recent visits of Iranian foreign minister, that Pakistan stated that Pakistan supports the Iranian nuclear program. So it's not like of
Yeah.
exclusive.
So it's going to be very, yes, because if there is, if Saudi Arabia really wants Pakistan to be that inclusive in that partnership which has been expected, then it will definitely complicate Pakistan-Iran relationship. And given the sectarian lines that are between two countries, Pakistan will open up another front of militancy inside Pakistan.
Thanks. Now I would like to invite others, colleagues. Apologies for just taking the bit discussion. Dr. Jahid, what would you say on this one? Like just particularly on how it will impact the region, the defense pact. Is the Bangladesh also in this kind of cooperation?
Right. Thank you. I think sort of this particular development sort of asserts the predictions that I was making, in the sense that small South Asian countries will look for extra regional players. Now, when we say extra regional players, we often think of only the big powers. But if you read through some of the serious research, the influential powers have increased from 13 to 34 in the latest global peace index, which includes, by the way, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, in some extent, some of the some of the African countries as well, who are playing dominant role in the regional security architecture or shaping these regional security things. Sania mentioned the Muslim NATO things, and it's true. The discussion was held long back. The underlying theme for that particular formation was Saudi Arabia viewed as the custodian of the two holy sites. That was sort of a very fundamental underlying theme. With that came into the Muslim alignment thing. But I'll not be surprised if more South Asian countries look for allies like Turkey, which would be again in a regional sort of a religious line for security guarantees or security pacts or any kind of security sort of alignments. But that, having said that, I being a retired military person, I can tell you this: this is not easy for a military to switch aside in real times, as Ambassador Anil was telling. The equipment of a particular military sort of defines how it will tilt. For India, the Russian equipment sort of dominates its military capability. For China, for Bangladesh, for India, also Chinese military equipment sort of dominates its capability. Because for any war-fighting machine, you need to have that assurance of the platforms and equipments, and it will not be easy. So yes, this looks like a political military alliance or some kind of alignments or some kind of going to a particular line of thoughts, but in the real sense, it probably will not matter much unless that fundamental capability with which the militaries of these small nations were born and sustains for their warfighting capability is shifted. So for now, the China-centric military development equipments dominates some of these countries, and that is not likely to change in case of India. Also, this is mostly, although there are a lot of Western platforms coming in. So this is one particular directions on this issue. But I also wanted to touch another thing, which is sort of unique to the case. I'm not sure how much it is for the Sri Lanka or Nepal, because in both in all these cases, I feel there is a sort of a common thread. Although I do believe that all happy families are alike, and each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. But the uprising or the revolution, whatever way you want to coin this, changes sort of propelled by the Zen Zs, were to some extent organic, at least at the beginning. It was organic. It was this genuine desire for change. So that is sort of probably the across, as far as I could read, or I could know from the Nepali thing as well, that it was organic. And for Bangladesh, I've personally seen that one. It gets deviated when it is sort of outsourced for the political parties to decide and sort of take hold of the ownership of this revolution or uprising. But if you consider democracy, which sort of thrives or is powered by the will of the people, then we have only heard their choice, so their voices. We haven't heard their choices yet, and that choice should come through a representative election for Bangladesh case. Once that comes, that should be the deciding factor for our stability, as Ambassador Anil was alluding to, that we should be able to, India should be able to deal with whatever the Bangladeshi people elects as their president, as their sort of representative. And in that interim, there is one particular issue which India probably can help out, which I don't see much improvement on that. We do see a lot of elements who are trying to sort of destabilize this, the process, because we are now in the process of holding our election in February, because of the regime, the last regime's people, those who have fled to India, and they are holding a lot of events through social medias and trying to sort of undermine the legitimacy of the current government. And there is all sorts of things going on. So that sort of also making India in some way, that feelings. India in this case, in Bangladesh case, was, I think, a collateral issue. It was not the, it became a collateral issue. The real frustration of the people was towards the government, but that because of that government was aligned with India, or more aligned with India, I'd rather say, the India was a collateral issue. So, but now at this point, when we are sort of going through a transition and trying to arrange a sort of a very credible election with a lot of enthusiasm and festivity, we see a lot of elements which is coming out of that part of our neighbor, by some elements of our own countries, those who are in that part of in India, sort of making noises and making different kind of things which undermining the democratic process or the legitimacy of the current government. So that is a external factors. At the same time, I also recognize another lacking on our part, which I think, in all fairness, should be also uttered here, because there is a probably we didn't have a very robust reconciliation, post-conflict or post-revolution reconciliation, particularly for the cases which are, let's say, non-judicial, which does not involve criminal offenses. So we have established some international crime tribunal for the crimes committed by the past regimes, or that they're going to be charged, and they're charged and their trials are going on. But there are many other petty small issues or small differences which are non-judicial, which are sort of personal in nature. That requires a very robust reconciliation system, post-conflict reconciliation, arbitration through social mechanism, through
all right,
societal
Dr. Jai,
mechanism.
I would thanks for your comments. I will take the last comments from the two other speakers. Maybe if then some may have left after that. And I will take the ambassador's comment in the last when what you were saying, that India can help out in the some kind of process there. So if ambassador wants to do that,
I have to leave in 5 minutes, please.
okay. Invite Dr. Jaiswal, if he's there, for his last comment
Thank you. I'll be very quick. There was a question on who are the largest beneficiary in this whole process in Nepal. I think China would be the last one to benefit from it, because Oli had best of the relation with China. He recently visited China at the SCO and at the sidelines. He also participated in anti-Japan parade, and he met Putin, Kim Jong-un, Xi Jinping, and everyone. And when Oli has lost his power, I think China had really lost the plot, because in last few months, Oli had established very strong ties with China. The second framework of BRI was signed, and there are lots of progress made on that. Um, uh, in fact, the way he had engaged with China really had made India and US uncomfortable. He was not able to balance other neighbors, other geopolitical players. That's why many of the Indian media has been reporting that probably there was a role of US and the deep state, because the recent visit of Oli to China, meeting Xi Jinping, Kim Jong-un, Putin, and others might have made US uncomfortable. So I think China is the one who has lost badly. Since we have a government who is not, who is a kind of do not belong to any political party, who do not have ideology, I think US and India is going to engage with the current government and benefit. Since Oli is not there, India is better in position to negotiate on his deal. So I think probably US and India, or you can say West, who supports democracy, would be the biggest beneficiary. And authoritarian regime like Russia and China, where many of them had expecting that there'd be closer ties with KP Oli's Communist Party and others, Communist Party of the world, I think probably they will be on the sideline at the moment. So I think that is how I look at it at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, you have to leave. Then, if you want to give a quick reply to Dr. Jahid's what he was asking about India's support and help in the election process, and then I will ask Dinok for the final comments.
Well, I think that what Dr. Zaid said has a lot of merit. The question is always that of perceptions as well, and then the reality, and then the media. And like he mentioned about, I also heard a lot in Bangladesh when I went there, that a lot of people there are complaining that all these people who have come into Calcutta and all the places are using that the media channels there to create disruptions or whatever. At the same time, of course, Sheikh Hasina continues to remain here. And I had reminded some of the Bangladeshi leaders that learn from history. And the history is that in India, when Indira Gandhi was arrested and handcuffed, she came back with a thumping majority. So if you just do not focus so much on what Sheikh Hasina to send Sheikh Hasina back or do whatever, that is probably not going to be very helpful, even domestically or otherwise. As far as India is concerned, we have fully committed to all our neighbors, not only, and you must not discount Pakistan as well. We have said clearly that Pakistan's economic progress is good for us. But for that, security considerations have to be addressed. So I want to assure you, and there's no change going to be in our policy. Only thing is there has to be a little bit of a calibration and a recalibration, which is necessary, because we also have limited resources. And we'll have to see how things play out eventually. And I want to thank all the panelists for enlightening us today. I'm so sorry I have to leave because I have to join another meeting at 8. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your remarks. Now I would like to invite Dinok for the final comments, and then we'll wrap up it.
Thanks, Indu. So yeah, listening to what all my fellow panelists have said, I think there's something that really stands up with when it comes to Sri Lanka and how we address the India-China relationship in regards to South Asia as a whole. Traditionally, Sri Lanka has always been a balancing act in regard to the two countries, while recognizing India is our largest and closest neighbor. And I'll So we have always looked to drive the relationship in development and engagement, economic engagement with China does not encroach on India's, especially their national security aspect. So that is something that we will continue to do here. It has also been a further pivot by Sri Lanka's foreign policy towards a more Asia-centric one. And for us, that means that we would want to see a far more stable South Asia and in the Great Asian region compared to what we're seeing right now. So countries like Bangladesh, Nepal, Pakistan, they're all close allies of ours. And so the instability that they're going through, having come to that point through a similar process as what Sri Lanka has, I think Sri Lanka definitely would want to be able to play a role in helping them move forward there. However, it's also important to note that Sri Lanka has always been an advocate for the absence of big power rivalry in the region. And by that, that includes India and China, but then also the US and China. And that's something that has been a concern. So when y'all are talking about the defense pact between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, these sort of defense pacts are not, I wouldn't say concerning, but there are pacts that, as a regional country, is something that Sri Lanka would also want to be made aware of and brought to the table. We have raised concerns in the past over defense pacts such as AUKUS, which has seen the US, the UK, and Australia bring about a defense pact into our region without the involvement of the regional countries. So that is something that we would want to see move forward. But at the same time, regional integration, regional cooperation is now one of the top priorities of Sri Lanka. So definitely a more stable South Asia is something that we would like to see move forward and something we'd want to assist in, having gone through a similar process, but now being in terms of politically, we're now back to a more stable footing.
Thanks, Denok. We already are out of time, and then that was a great discussion. I thank you all for joining this panel, and I guess we have another round of the talk. Once let's evolve more issues and more content evolves in the South Asia. Surely we'll meet again, and I thank you all.